Cold Open, November 2nd, 1940. You do not fight when your ammunition counter reads 0. This is not cowardice. This is arithmetic. This is the cold logic that governs aerial combat at 8,000 feet above northern Greece on a grey November morning in 1940. Second Lieutenant Marinos Stavrakis knows this. He learned it at the Hellenic Air Force Academy. He learned it from his instructors, from British manuals, from the hard calculus of survival that every fighter pilot carries in his head like a prayer. When your guns are empty, you disengage. You dive for cloud cover. You use your remaining fuel to get home. You live to fight another day. Every military academy on Earth teaches this equation. But at 11:47 hours on November 2nd, 1940, 8,000 feet above Thessaloniki, with 0 rounds remaining in his ammunition bays, Marinos Stavrakis rewrites the arithmetic. The Italian Savoia Marchetti SM-79 bomber is running for home. 3 engines roaring, crew desperate. The hunchbacked fuselage trailing smoke from Marinos's earlier attack when he still had bullets, still had the 20mm shells that tore through the bomber's left engine and sent it lurching out of formation. But the bomber is still flying, still escaping, and Marinos is out of ammunition. He is 24 years old. He has been a combat pilot for exactly 33 days, and he makes a decision that will define the rest of his life. He does not turn away. He does not dive for safety. He advances his throttle. He aims the nose of his PZL P-24 fighter, specifically the spinning 3-blade propeller, directly at the tail section of the Italian bomber. And he rams it. Metal shrieks. The sound is a howl that cuts through the engine roar, through the windscreen, through every rational thought in Marinos's head. His propeller blades, spinning at 2,000 revolutions per minute, chew through the SM-79's rudder like an industrial saw through sheet metal. The bomber's tail section disintegrates. Pieces of aluminum skin, control cables, rudder framework, all of it tears away into the slipstream. The SM-79 immediately enters an uncontrolled spin. No rudder means no directional control. The laws of aerodynamics are absolute. The bomber corkscrews toward the earth, 3 engines still running, crew screaming physics turned against them. Marinos's own aircraft shudders violently. His propeller is mangled. 2 blades bent backward at impossible angles. The 3rd blade snapped off entirely, the sudden imbalance sending vibrations through the engine mount that threatened to tear the entire power plant from its moorings. The engine coughs, misfires, oil pressure dropping, cylinder head temperature spiking into the red zone on his instrument panel. But the aircraft is still flying. Barely. Marinos coaxes it down, nurses the dying engine, plays the throttle like a musician, finding the exact RPM where the damaged engine will keep turning without shaking itself apart. He glides. He calculates glide ratios and wind drift and the distance to anything flat enough to call a landing zone. He puts the crippled fighter down in a field 3 kilometers from where the SM-79 impacted. The landing is controlled violence. Tailwheel first, then mains the aircraft, bouncing once on the uneven ground before settling with a groan of stressed metal. Marinos cuts the fuel mixture. The engine dies with a sound like a man's last breath. Silence. Then Marinos unbuckles his harness, climbs out of the cockpit, draws his service pistol, a Belgian FN model 1910, 7 rounds of 7.65mm ammunition, and walks across the field to where the Italian bomber crew is crawling from their wreckage. He arrests them at gunpoint. 4 men, pilot, co-pilot, bombardier, gunner, all shaken, all staring at this Greek pilot who just deliberately destroyed their aircraft by flying into it and somehow walked away. The pilot, a captain, asks in broken Greek, "Why did you not bail out?" Marinos does not answer immediately. He is thinking about the arithmetic, about what the textbook said was impossible, about the equation he just solved with his propeller instead of his guns. Finally, he says, "Because you were escaping." Present day, April the 5th, 1941, 5 months later. The afternoon sun slants through the windows of the briefing room at Tatoi Airfield, 15 kilometers north of Athens. The light catches dust motes suspended in air that smells of cigarette smoke, aviation fuel, and the particular anxiety that precedes difficult decisions. Marinos Stavrakis sits in the 3rd row, still a 2nd lieutenant, still 24 years old, though the 5 months since November have added lines around his eyes that were not there before. 127 combat sorties against the Italian Regia Aeronautica will do that. 127 times climbing into an obsolete fighter to face a numerically superior enemy. 127 times making the numbers work when they should not. On his chest, pinned above his left breast pocket, is the Gold Cross of Valor, Greece's highest military decoration, He is the only Air Force officer to receive it during the entire Greco-Italian War. He received it for the ramming, for deliberately destroying an enemy bomber with his propeller and then walking away, for turning his aircraft into a weapon when conventional weapons failed. The medal is heavy, heavier than the actual gold it contains. It carries the weight of expectation, of being the pilot who broke the rules and survived. Around him, 40 other pilots sit in wooden chairs arranged in rows. These are the men of the Royal Hellenic Air Force's fighter squadrons. Not 41. 40. The 41st pilot, Captain Konstantinos Maras, is already dead killed 3 hours ago when his PZL P-24 took a direct hit from Italian anti-aircraft fire over the Albanian front. That leaves 40 pilots, 41 operational PZL P-24 fighters. This is what remains of the Royal Hellenic Air Force after 5 months of continuous combat against Italy's invasion through Albania. 5 months that began on October 28, 1940, when Benito Mussolini, jealous of Adolf Hitler's conquests and hungry for his own empire, sent his armies crashing across the Albanian border into Greek territory. The Italians deployed 380 aircraft, fighters, bombers, reconnaissance planes. The Greeks had 79. It should have been over in weeks. It was not. The Greek army fighting in the mountains of Pindus not only stopped the Italian advance, they threw it back. By March 1941, Greek forces had captured nearly a quarter of Albania. Mussolini's campaign collapsed into a frozen stalemate in mountain passes where Italian divisions bled themselves white against Greek positions. But the air war bled Greece white. For 5 months, Greek pilots flew sortie after sortie against superior Italian numbers. They engaged bomber formations. They duelled with Fiat CR-42 biplane fighters. They strafed ground targets in Albania. They won more often than the odds suggested they should. During the Greco-Italian War, the Royal Hellenic Air Force shot down 64 confirmed enemy aircraft, another 24 probables, a kill ratio that defied the numerical disadvantage. But victories cost airplanes, and Greece has no factory to build more. 79 aircraft in October, 41 in April. Every downed fighter is one less gun in the sky. Every killed pilot is irreplaceable training and experience lost forever. The man standing at the front of the briefing room is Colonel Georgios Papadakis, 45 years old, 5 years. Mustache going grey, eyes that have seen too many young men die. He commanded the 22nd Pursuit Squadron when the war started. Now he commands what is left of the entire fighter force. He does not look like a man about to deliver good news. "Gentlemen," he begins. His voice is steady, a commander's voice. "British intelligence has provided updated reconnaissance of German forces along our northern border." He gestures to a map pinned to the wall behind him. Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, the long frontier where Greece meets the rest of the Balkans. As of this morning, the German 12th Army has completed its deployment. Field Marshal Wilhelm List commands 10 infantry divisions, 4 panzer divisions, and specialized mountain troops. Total strength approximately 300,000 men. He pauses. Lets that number settle. Air support is provided by Luftflotte 4 under Generaloberst Alexander Löhr. Latest count 1,200 aircraft of all types. Someone in the front row whispers something in Greek. A curse, probably. Or a prayer. At this point, they are the same thing. Colonel Papadakis continues. Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighters. Junkers Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers. Dornier Du-17 medium bombers. Bf-110 heavy fighters. Henschel reconnaissance aircraft. This is the same Luftflotte that reduced Poland to rubble in 3 weeks. The same force that achieved air superiority over France in days. He lets that information hang in the air like smoke. Marinos does the arithmetic automatically. 1,200 German aircraft, 41 Greek fighters, a ratio of 29-1. Nearly 30 enemy aircraft for every Greek fighter. And that is before accounting for the quality difference. The PZL P-24 sitting on the flight line outside this briefing room is a high-wing monoplane designed in the early 1930s by Polish engineers. Fixed landing gear, open cockpit. Metal framework with fabric covering over the control surfaces. It has 2 20mm Oerlikon cannons and 2 7.92mm machine guns. It can reach a maximum speed of 267 miles per hour at 13,000 feet. The Messerschmitt Bf-109E, the backbone of the Luftwaffe's fighter force, can reach 345 miles per hour, 80 miles per hour faster. In a dogfight, that gap is eternity. It means the enemy can engage when he wants and disengage when he wants. It means you cannot chase, you cannot escape. You can only react always a step behind, always at a disadvantage that numbers cannot overcome.
Colonel Papadakis is still talking. The British Commonwealth Expeditionary Force in Greece numbers 58,000 troops. Most arrived without heavy equipment. They are establishing defensive positions, but their assessment is clear. He pauses.
Against the forces Germany is deploying, conventional defence is unlikely to succeed. Another pause. Longer this time. The British Air Ministry has made a recommendation. They advise that we evacuate our remaining aircraft and pilots to Egypt, fly south to Crete, then to North Africa, join RAF squadrons there, preserve our pilots and equipment for continued resistance from a more defensible position. The room is silent. 40 pilots processing the same equation, the same cold calculus. Stay and fight 1,200 German aircraft with 41 obsolete fighters. Or leave. Evacuate. Live to fight another day from Egypt, where there are modern aircraft proper support, a chance to make a difference instead of dying uselessly in the first days of a German invasion that will roll over Greece like a steel avalanche. It makes perfect sense. It is the rational choice. It is what the textbooks recommend. Colonel Papadakis looks at the men in front of him. Young men, most of them. Mid-20s, some younger. Leonidas Antoniou in the second row is 22, the youngest combat pilot in the squadron. 2 missions against the Italians, barely enough experience to qualify as operational. I want to be clear, Papadakis says. This is not an order. This is a choice. If you choose to evacuate to Egypt, no one will question your courage. You have fought for 5 months against superior numbers. You have done your duty and more. The recommendation to evacuate comes from men who understand air warfare. It is a sound tactical decision. He stops, takes a breath. But if you choose to stay, if you choose to fly against the Luftwaffe with what we have, you need to understand what that means. The Germans will achieve air superiority within days, perhaps hours. We have 41 fighters. They have 1,200 aircraft. The odds are not in our favor. Marinos is thinking about his father. His father was a fisherman in Pyrgos, a village on the southwestern coast of the Peloponnese. Rocky hills covered in olive groves, ancient stones, a place where time moves slowly and men are raised to remember what honor means. His father died in the summer of 1939, heart attack while mending nets. He was 53 years old. At the funeral, Marinos made a promise to protect the family, to protect the hills and the olive groves and the village where he was born. Those hills are now in the path of the German advance. If Greece falls, the Wehrmacht will march through Pyrgos, will occupy those hills, will turn the village into a garrison point or a supply depot, or simply a footnote in their operational maps. Marinos looks at the gold cross on his chest. He earned this medal for breaking the arithmetic, for doing what the textbook said was impossible, for turning a fighter aircraft into a ramming weapon because the alternative, letting the enemy escape, was unacceptable. The Germans expect Greece to calculate the odds and surrender. They expect the Royal Hellenic Air Force to see 1,200 aircraft and do the rational thing, evacuate, preserve forces, accept reality. But Marinos is thinking about November 2nd, about zero ammunition and an escaping bomber, and a decision that made no sense on paper but made perfect sense in the moment. He is thinking about calculations that cannot measure will. He stands. 40 pairs of eyes turn toward him. "Colonel," Marinos says. His voice is steady. "If we leave, who defends the sky over Athens?" Papadakis looks at him. The colonel knows Marinos, knows about the ramming, knows about 127 sorties, knows this is the pilot who received the Gold Cross for refusing to accept reality. "No one," Papadakis says honestly. "The Germans will own the sky." Marinos nods. "Then I stay." For a moment, no one else moves. Then Leonidas Antoniou stands. 22 years old. 2 combat missions. A boy, really, who should evacuate to Egypt and live long enough to become a man. "I stay," Leonidas says. Thanos Georgiadis stands. 25. Farmer's son from Crete who joined the Air Force to escape poverty and found himself in the cockpit of a fighter. "I stay." Ioannis Vretos, 30 years old. Schoolteacher before the war. Taught history to children in Athens. Now he teaches Italian pilots about Greek determination. "I stay." One by one they stand. 40 pilots. 40 men who have done the calculations and chosen to ignore them. Colonel Papadakis watches them. He is not surprised. He has flown with these men. He knows that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite fear, despite numbers, despite cold logic that says resistance equals annihilation. "Then we fly," Papadakis says simply. "We fly until there is nothing left to fly." April 6, 1941, 05:15 hours, Thessaloniki Airfield. The sky is still dark when Marinos walks to his aircraft. Dawn is 45 minutes away. The airfield is quiet except for the sound of engines warming up, the cough and growl of radial power plants coming to life in the pre-dawn cold. His PZL P-24 sits on the flight line. Tail number 128, the same aircraft he has flown for 5 months. The same fighter he rammed the Italian bomber with on November the 2nd. It does not look like much. High-wing monoplane, fixed landing gear jutting down like the legs of some metal insect. Open cockpit. The fabric covering on the wings and control surfaces shows patches where ground crews have repaired bullet damage and shrapnel tears. The metal fuselage bears scratches and dents that no amount of maintenance can fully erase. But the engine is sound. The guns are loaded, and the airframe the chief mechanic assured Marinos of this has been reinforced. Stavros Andriadis is 55 years old. Chief mechanic for the 22nd Pursuit Squadron. Civilian contractor who has been maintaining aircraft since before Marinos was born. He is waiting beside the fighter when Marinos arrives. Second Lieutenant, Stavros greets him. His voice is rough from decades of cigarettes and shouting over engine noise. Stavros. Marinos acknowledges. The mechanic pats the fuselage like a man patting a horse. She's ready. Full fuel, full ammunition. Guns bore-sighted yesterday. Thank you. Stavros hesitates. Then, I need to tell you something. About your aircraft. Marinos looks at him. After you rammed that Italian bomber in November, I made modifications, reinforced the main fuselage framework, added bracing around the engine mounts and the wing attachment points, stronger rivets, thicker metal in the stress areas. Why? Because you survived a ramming attack that should have killed you. The impact forces should have torn this aircraft apart, but the frame held. Barely. So I made it stronger. He pauses. It cost you 15 kilograms of weight. You lose maybe 5 miles per hour in top speed. But you can take more punishment now, more hits, more damage, and still fly. Marinos processes this. 5 miles per hour. Against Messerschmitt Bf-109s that are already 80 miles per hour faster, 5 more miles per hour would not matter. But the ability to absorb damage to take hits and keep flying, that could mean the difference between making it home and dying in a burning cockpit over enemy territory. Why tell me now? Marinos asks. Stavros looks at the eastern horizon where the first pale light is beginning to show. Because today, you need to know you can take hits and keep flying. They both know what is coming. The German invasion begins at dawn. Intelligence reports indicate massive formations assembling across the Bulgarian border. Bombers, fighters, reconnaissance aircraft. The full weight of Luftflotte 4 preparing to sweep Greek airspace clear of resistance. How many rounds? Marinos asks. 120 rounds of 20mm, 600 rounds of 7.92mm. That's all we have. Ammunition is critically low. After today's sorties, we will be scrounging rounds from wrecked aircraft. 120 rounds, 60 per cannon. At the cyclic rate of fire, 450 rounds per minute, each cannon will fire for exactly 8 seconds before running dry. 8 seconds of 20mm cannon fire. That is what Marinos has to work with. He climbs into the cockpit. The seat cushion is worn smooth from 127 previous sorties. The control stick is wrapped in leather that his hands have shaped over 5 months of combat. The instrument panel is familiar as his own face. Airspeed indicator, altimeter, compass, fuel gauge, oil pressure, cylinder head temperature, manifold pressure. All the dials and gauges that tell a pilot whether his aircraft is about to kill him. He runs through the pre-flight checklist. Control surfaces, trim tabs, fuel mixture, magnetos, throttle friction lock. All the rituals that keep a man alive in a machine designed to operate at the edge of what physics allows. The engine starts with a cough that becomes a roar. The 3-blade propeller spins. Still damaged from the November ramming, still slightly out of balance but functional. The mechanics have done what they can. The engine runs. The fighter flies. That is enough. Marinos looks at his watch. 0532 hours. The sun will rise in 13 minutes. The Germans will come with it. 5:30 hours. The sky explodes. The first wave crosses the Bulgarian frontier at exactly 0530 hours. 50 aircraft. Dornier do 17 bombers in tight formation, 3 ship elements stacked in altitude from 8,000 to 12,000 feet. Above them, weaving in protective patterns, Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighters gleam in the early morning light. The bombers are heading for Thessaloniki, Greece's second largest city. Port facilities, rail yards, government buildings. Strategic targets that the Luftwaffe will reduce to rubble before the Wehrmacht's panzer divisions arrive to occupy the smoking ruins. At Thessaloniki Airfield, 7 PZL P-24 fighters claw into the dawn sky. 7 fighters of the 22nd Pursuit Squadron, 7 aircraft to intercept 50. Marinos is leading the second element, 3 fighters. Himself, Leonidas Antoniou on his right wing, and a pilot named Spiros on his left. Young men in obsolete fighters climbing toward an enemy that outnumbers them 7-1. The odds are absurd, but numbers do not matter when your country is being invaded and you are the only thing standing between the enemy and your city. They climb. 2,000 feet, 4,000, 6,000. The PZLP. 24 climbs at 1,800 feet per minute, when light, when the engine is fresh, when everything is perfect. Today, fully loaded with ammunition and fuel, the climb rate is closer to 1,500 feet per minute. The German formation is at 8,000 feet when Marinos first sees them. He keys his radio. Contacts, bearing 015, range 8 kilometers, multiple bombers with fighter escort. Colonel Papadakis' voice crackles back from the tower. Engage the bombers, ignore the fighters if possible. Ignore the Messerschmitt Bf-109s. Ignore the fastest, most dangerous fighters in the world. Ignore the aircraft that can dive away at 420 miles per hour and climb back at 3,000 feet per minute. Simple. Marinos advances his throttle. The engine responds. Oil pressure steady. Cylinder head temperature rising but still in the green. The PZL accelerates to its maximum speed, 267 miles per hour at this altitude.
The German formation grows larger. He can see the individual aircraft now. Dornier Do-17s, the flying pencil the Germans call them. Sleek fuselages, twin engines, glazed nose sections where the bombardier and pilot sit surrounded by plexiglass, watching the ground rush up to meet them. Above the bombers, the Bf-109s orbit. Waiting, confident. They have fought Poland and France and won. They have faced the RAF over Britain and held their own. Now they are facing Greek fighters in obsolete monoplanes. This is not a battle. This is target practice. Marinos picks his target. A Dornier on the edge of the formation, slightly separated. The weakest gazelle in the herd. He banks, pulls into a diving turn that brings him down and behind the bomber. His airspeed builds. 270, 280, 290. The PZL shudders as it approaches its never-exceed speed, the point where the airframe will begin to come apart from aerodynamic stress. Marinos eases back on the stick.
Levels out 200 meters behind the Dornier. The bomber crew sees him. The rear gunner swings his machine gun around. Tracer rounds arc through the air. Bright lines of fire that pass above Marinos' canopy close enough that he can see the individual rounds tumbling through space. Marinos waits. Closer. 150 meters. The textbooks say to open fire at 200 meters. At 300 if you are unsure of your deflection angle. But ammunition is limited. 120 rounds of 20 millimeter. 8 seconds of trigger time. There will be no second chance. No opportunity to go around again and correct your aim. 100 meters. Marinos centers the Dornier in his gun sight. The circular reticle frames the bomber's left engine. He leads the target slightly, accounts for his own airspeed and the bomber's airspeed and the relative motion between them. And he fires. The 20 millimeter cannons roar. 2 guns mounted in the wings, firing through the propeller arc via synchronized mechanisms that prevent the rounds from hitting the spinning blades. Each gun fires at 450 rounds per minute, 15 rounds per second combined. Marinos holds the trigger for 2.8 seconds. 42 rounds. The effect is catastrophic. High explosive incendiary shells designed to destroy aircraft. Each round is a small bomb that detonates on impact. 42 small bombs shred the Dornier's left engine. The cowling tears away. Metal fragments spray into the slipstream. The propeller suddenly unbalanced tears itself from the engine mount and spins away. Fire blooms in the engine nacelle. The Dornier lurches left. Pilot fighting the controls. An airplane with asymmetric thrust with one engine burning and the other at full power will try to spin. Will try to kill you through simple physics unless you can muscle the controls and compensate with rudder and aileron. The German pilot is good. He keeps the aircraft level. Begins a shallow turn back toward Bulgaria. But the fire is spreading. Marinos watches, does not fire again. Ammunition is too precious to waste on an aircraft that is already dying. The Dornier's crew begins to bail out. Canopy jettisoned. One figure 2-3 tumbling through space before parachutes blossom white against the dawn sky. The bomber enters a shallow dive, engines smoking. Within 30 seconds it will impact the ground 3 kilometers from Thessaloniki. Marinos has been in combat for 40 seconds. He has fired 42 rounds of 20 millimeter ammunition. He has destroyed 1 enemy bomber. And now the Messerschmitt Bf-109s are coming for him. The first fighter screams past at 400 miles per hour, a blur of grey-blue camouflage and black crosses. The German pilot fires a burst, machine guns chattering, but the deflection is wrong. The angle is too steep. The rounds pass 20 meters behind Marinos's tail. Marinos yanks his control stick hard left. The PZL responds. Tight turn. Wing nearly vertical. The horizon spins. Sky becomes ground becomes sky. G-forces press him into his seat. 4 Gs, 4.5. The blood drains from his head. His vision narrows. Grey edges creeping in from the periphery. But the turn radius is tight. Tighter than the BF-109 can match. This is the advantage. The only advantage. The PZL P-24 has a wing loading of 98 kilograms per square meter. The BF-109 has 174 kilograms per square meter. Wing loading determines turn performance. Lower wing loading means you can turn tighter, can bleed speed in a turn that would make a heavier aircraft stall and fall from the sky. The German fighter tries to follow, pulls into a turn, but his speed is too high, his wing loading is too great. The BF-109 overshoots. For 3 seconds, just 3 seconds, Marinos has the advantage.
He pulls the nose up, tries to bring his guns to bear. The Messerschmitt is climbing away, using its superior speed to escape to gain altitude to reset the engagement on terms favorable to the German. Marinos fires 87 rounds of 7.92mm machine gun fire. Lighter rounds, less destructive. But all he can bring to bear in the brief moment before the German climbs out of range. He misses. The tracers arc through empty air. The BF-109 climbs vertically, 3,200 feet per minute, a climbing rate the PZL cannot match. The German pilot hangs his aircraft on its propeller, pulls over the top of a loop, and dives away before Marinos can react. Gone. This is the reality of the fight. The PZL can hurt the bombers, can occasionally surprise a German fighter for a few seconds in a tight turn, but it cannot chase, cannot dictate the terms of engagement. The 80-mile-per-hour speed gap means the Germans fight only when they choose to fight.
Marinos levels his wings, scans the sky. The dogfight has scattered the formation. Greek fighters and German aircraft weaving through the morning sky above Thessaloniki. Tracer rounds stitching patterns of light. Aircraft diving and climbing and turning in the three-dimensional ballet that is aerial combat. He sees Leonidas Antoniou, his wingman, pursuing a Dornier. Sees the young pilot close to firing range. Sees Leonidas's guns flash. The bomber shudders but continues flying. Then a BF-109 drops from above. The classic bounce. The German fighter coming down from altitude with speed and surprise and every advantage physics can provide. Marinos keys his radio. Leonidas brake, left. Too late. The Messerschmitt's guns hammer. Cannon shells and machine gun rounds pour into Leonidas's PZL. The fabric covering on the left wing shreds. Metal framework exposed. Control surfaces torn. The fighter rolls inverted not from pilot input, but from aerodynamic forces acting on a damaged airframe and enters a spin. Marinos watches Leonidas fight for control, watches the PZL spiral down. 3,000 feet, 2,000, 1,500. At 1,000 feet, Leonidas gets the aircraft level. Barely. The fighter is shuddering, flying on damage and determination. But it is flying. Leonidas makes an emergency landing in a field 5 kilometers from the airfield. Gear up. Belly landing. The PZL skids across rough ground in a shower of sparks and torn metal. It comes to rest against a low stone wall. Marinos sees Leonidas climb from the cockpit, sees him wave. Alive. Injured, probably, but alive. The dogfight continues for another 8 minutes. It feels like 8 hours. Marinos engages 2 more bombers. Damages one, fires 36 rounds of 20mm that tear through the Dornier's tail section. Runs out of cannon ammunition trying to destroy the second. His guns click empty. 8 seconds of firing time exhausted across 3 separate engagements. He still has machine gun ammunition. Still has the 7.92mm rounds. But without the cannons, he cannot reliably destroy bombers. Machine guns can damage, can wound. But the 20mm high-explosive shells are what kill. At 06118 hours, 48 minutes after the first contact, the German formation breaks off. The bombers turn north, back toward Bulgaria. Mission aborted. Too many losses. 3 Dorniers destroyed. 2 more damaged and smoking. The Luftwaffe did not expect this level of resistance. The 7 Greek fighters, now 6, land one by one. Marinos touches down at 0624 hours, rolls to a stop on the flight line, cuts the engine. The sudden silence is profound. He sits in the cockpit for a moment, hands still gripping the control stick, heart still racing, the adrenaline that kept him sharp during combat now making his hands shake. He climbs out, legs unsteady. He has been in the cockpit for 52 minutes. Stavros, the mechanic, is waiting. How bad? Marinos looks at his aircraft, counts the holes. 11 bullet holes in the fuselage, 3 in the left wing. 1 round passed through the canopy frame 15 centimeters from his head. Flyable, Marinos says. Stavros walks around the fighter, inspects the damage with an expert eye. "I can patch this, but ammunition is the problem. You are empty on 20mm. Empty. We have maybe 40 rounds left in stores. Not enough for a full reload." Marinos does the arithmetic. 40 rounds, 20 per cannon, 2 seconds of firing time. "Load what we have," he says. He walks to the operations building. Other pilots are landing, debriefing, sharing information. The butcher's bill comes in over the next hour. 7 PZL fighters scrambled, 6 returned. Leonidas Antonio crashed but survived. Injuries: 7 shrapnel fragments in his left leg, broken wrist concussion. The squadron doctor says he will not fly again. 2 other pilots from different squadrons were killed. 1 shot down over the city. 1 lost in a collision with a Bf-109, whether accidental or a ramming attack, no one knows. The Royal Hellenic Air Force began April 6, 1941 with 41 operational fighters. By noon, they have 34. The Germans have been in Greek airspace for 7 hours. 1400 hours. Second sortie. The German bombers return at 1400 hours. Marinos is eating bread and cheese in the mess tent when the air raid siren howls. He drops his food, runs for his aircraft. Stavros has reloaded his weapons. 40 rounds of 20mm ammunition, 20 per cannon, 2 seconds of firing time, plus 400 rounds of 7.92mm machine gun ammunition, 2/3 of a full load. This is what he has. 5 PZL fighters scramble. The squadron is down to 5 operational aircraft, 2 damaged and being repaired, the rest destroyed or 2 shot up to fly. This time the German formation is smaller, 20 Dornier bombers, but the fighter escort is heavier, 15 Bf-109s circling above the bombers like sharks. Marinos leads the flight, climbs to 8,000 feet, the altitude where thin air makes engines gasp and men struggle to breathe, but where combat happens because that is where the bombers fly. He picks his target, attacks from the side, a beam attack where he leads the bomber and fires across its flight path. Deflection shooting, the hardest shot in aerial combat. He fires all 40 rounds of 20mm in one sustained burst. 2 seconds. Sees hits on the bomber's fuselage. Sees metal tear. The Dornier drops out of formation, trailing smoke, but keeps flying on one engine. His cannons are empty again. A Bf-109 dives on him. Marinos brakes hard right, turns inside the Germans' attack, pulls 5 Gs that make his vision tunnel and his lungs burn. The Messerschmitt overshoots, climbs away. Gone. The dogfight becomes chaos. 5 Greek fighters against 35 German aircraft. Bombers and fighters all mixed together in a swirling knife fight at 8,000 feet. Marinos switches to machine guns, engages a Bf-109 that makes the mistake of turning with him, fires 128 rounds, sees tracers hit the Messerschmitt's tail. The German breaks off, damaged but flying. At 14:34 hours, Marinos is out of ammunition. Both cannons empty, machine guns nearly dry. He has perhaps 80 rounds of 7.92mm remaining. Not enough to matter. He radios the tower. "Winchester, returning to base." He dives away, uses gravity to build speed, gets low, stays in the weeds where the German fighters will not follow because the risk of hitting the ground is too high. He lands at 14:41 hours. 3 other PZL fighters land behind him. 1 does not return. Spiros, the pilot who flew on Marinos' left wing during the dawn sortie, shot down by a Bf-109 over the city outskirts. No parachute seen, no survivor report. 34 fighters this morning, 31 now, and the day is not over. 1900 hours. Evening. The 3rd German raid comes at 1900 hours. Junkers, Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers this time. The scream of their sirens audible from 10 kilometers away as they plunge toward their targets. The 22nd Pursuit Squadron has 3 flyable aircraft. Marinos is not one of them. His PZL is being rearmed, mechanics scrounging ammunition from every source they can find, pulling rounds from training aircraft, from reserve stocks that were supposed to last months, from the dead. He stands on the flight line and watches 3 fighters take off to face 20 Stukas. They shoot down 2, damage 3 others. All 3 Greek fighters return, but the Stukas hit the airfield. Bombs crater the runway, destroy 2 aircraft on the ground, kill 3 ground crew members. One of the dead is Stavros Andriadis, the chief mechanic, 55 years old, killed by strafing fire from a Bf-110 heavy fighter while trying to push a damaged PZL into a revetment to protect it from the bombs. Marinos finds him an hour later, the body covered by a tarp, other mechanics standing around in silence. Stavros was not a soldier, was not even military. He was a civilian contractor who maintained aircraft because he loved the machinery, because he understood that keeping these fighters in the air meant keeping pilots alive. He told Marinos this morning that the reinforced airframe would help him survive. Now Stavros is dead, and Marinos is alive, and the ironies of war do not care about justice. That evening, Colonel Papadakis issues the evacuation order, not for the pilots, for the ground personnel, mechanics, armourers, radio operators, everyone not essential to keeping the remaining fighters operational. Fall back to Larissa, Papadakis orders. We cannot defend this airfield.
The Germans will be here by tomorrow. Larissa, 100 kilometers south. The next defensive line, the next airfield, the next place to make a stand. The evacuation begins after dark. Trucks loaded with tools and spare parts, and the personal effects of men who are leaving behind the only home they have known for months. The convoy rolls south through the night. Marinos watches them go. The 22nd Pursuit Squadron. What remains of it will fly out at first light, will abandon Thessaloniki, will cede the sky to the Luftwaffe. For tonight, the airfield is quiet. Marinos walks to his fighter. PZL P-24 tail number 128. The aircraft that survived a ramming attack in November. That has been patched and repaired and held together by Stavros's skill and determination. The mechanics' reinforcements are still there, the extra bracing, the thicker rivets. The modifications that added 15 kilograms and cost 5 miles per hour, but gave Marinos the ability to take 11 bullet hits today and keep flying. Stavros is dead, but his work lives on in this aircraft. Marinos runs his hand along the fuselage, metal still warm from the day's sorties. He can feel the dents, the patches over bullet holes, the scars of combat. He thinks about Stavros's final gift. The strengthened frame that saved his life today will save his life tomorrow if he survives long enough to need saving again. Thank you, he says quietly. To the aircraft, to Stavros, to whatever gods watch over pilots and mechanics and men who refuse to surrender when numbers say they should. The stars are coming out above Thessaloniki. Somewhere to the north, the German 2nd Panzer Division is advancing. Tanks and armoured vehicles rolling through the night. By tomorrow, they will reach the city. By tomorrow, the sky above northern Greece will belong to the Luftwaffe. But not tonight. Tonight, for a few hours more, this airfield and this sky and this damaged fighter belong to Greece. Marinos looks at his watch. 147 hours. In 7 hours, the sun will rise on April the 7th, 1941, and the fight will continue. April the 7th, 1941, 05:47 hours, Larissa Airfield. The flight south from Thessaloniki takes 32 minutes, 4 PZL P-24 fighters in loose formation. Dawn breaking behind them. The city they defended for one day now falling into German hands. You cannot hold what you cannot defend. When the enemy has panzer divisions and you have obsolete fighters, you fall back to the next line. Larissa Airfield is 100 kilometers south of Thessaloniki. Grass runway, a handful of wooden buildings, fuel trucks and ammunition stores that were supposed to support a full squadron, but now must sustain the remnants of an entire air force. Marinos lands at 0619 hours, cuts the engine.
Sits in the cockpit for a moment, listening to the metal tick as it cools. He has been awake for 26 hours. Yesterday he flew 3 combat sorties, engaged German bombers and fighters 6 separate times, fired 118 rounds of 20mm ammunition and 315 rounds of 7.92mm, shot down 1 Dornier Do-17, damaged 3 others, survived 11 bullet hits to his aircraft, and watched Stavros die. The mechanic's body is still in Thessaloniki. There was no time to bury him properly, no time for funerals when the Wehrmacht is advancing at 45 kilometers per day and the Luftwaffe owns the sky. Marinos climbs from his cockpit. His legs are stiff. 26 hours of adrenaline and exhaustion have left him hollow. But there is no time to rest. There is never time to rest. Colonel Papadakis is waiting in the operations building. A map spread across a wooden table. Red markers showing German advances. Blue markers showing Greek positions. The red is swallowing the blue like a rising tide. Thessaloniki has fallen, Papadakis says without preamble. German 2nd Panzer Division entered the city at 0530 hours. The British Commonwealth forces are falling back to the Ali-Akmon line. Greek army units on the Albanian front are being outflanked. He looks at the assembled pilots. 11 men. That is what remains of the 22nd Pursuit Squadron. 11 pilots who flew south from Thessaloniki this morning. The Royal Hellenic Air Force began yesterday with 41 operational fighters. Papadakis continues. Current count 31 aircraft across all squadrons. We lost 10 fighters on the first day of the German invasion. 10 fighters. 10 pilots. Some dead, some wounded, some with aircraft too damaged to repair. But Papadakis is not finished. Intelligence reports indicate the Luftwaffe lost 32 aircraft yesterday, destroyed or damaged beyond immediate repair. This is unexpected. German operational planning assumed they would achieve air superiority within 48 hours with minimal losses. We have disrupted that timeline. Marinos processes this information. 32 German aircraft lost. The Royal Hellenic Air Force shooting down or damaging aircraft at a rate the Luftwaffe did not anticipate. It changes nothing strategically. The Germans still have more than 1,000 aircraft, still have overwhelming numerical superiority, but it means yesterday mattered. Every bomber shot down is one less bomb falling on Greek positions. Every fighter damaged is one less gun in the sky. Every hour of delay gives British forces time to establish defensive positions, gives Greek units time to reposition. Small victories. Tactical wins that will not change the outcome, but might buy time. Today's mission priorities. Papadakis says, first, defend this airfield. The Luftwaffe will target our remaining bases. Second, support ground forces where possible. The Wehrmacht is advancing faster than anticipated. Our army needs eyes in the sky. Third, interdict German bomber formations targeting Athens. He pauses, looks at each man individually. Fuel is limited. Ammunition is critically low. We are rationing both. Maximum 2 sorties per day per pilot. Make every round count. 2 sorties. Yesterday, Marinos flew 3. Today, he will fly 2. Tomorrow, if there is a tomorrow, maybe 1. The arithmetic of attrition grinding down to 0. Rest while you can. Papadakis finishes. First patrol launches at 0800 hours. The pilots disperse. Some to sleep, some to eat. Some to write letters home that will never be mailed because the postal service has collapsed and the Germans are cutting communication lines faster than messages can travel. Marinos walks to the mess tent, finds bread and coffee. Black coffee that tastes like burnt mud, but contains enough caffeine to keep a man conscious. He sits at a wooden table, alone, thinks about Stavros, about the mechanic's last words. Today, you need to know you can take hits and keep flying. Stavros was right. The reinforced airframe saved Marinos' life yesterday. 11 bullet hits. Any one of them could have struck a critical component. Fuel line, control cable, engine mount. But the extra bracing held. The thicker metal deflected rounds that would have punched through standard framework. The mechanic died protecting an aircraft. Marinos lived because of that protection. Sacrifice defies calculation. 0800 hours, first sortie. 6 PZL fighters take off at 0800 hours, Marinos leading 1 element of 3. They climb to patrol altitude, 8,000 feet. The sky is clear, visibility unlimited, a perfect day for flying and killing. The German bombers arrive at 0847 hours, 15 Dornier Do-17s heading south. Targeting Greek positions along the Ali-Akmon line where British and Greek forces are trying to establish a defensive front. The 6 Greek fighters intercept at 0851 hours. Marinos has 56 rounds of 20mm ammunition, 28 per cannon, scavenged from wrecks and reserve stocks. 3 seconds of firing time if he holds the trigger down continuously. He will not hold the trigger down continuously. He picks his target, attacks from below and behind. The Dornier's blind spot, closes to 100 meters, aims carefully, fires, 18 rounds, 2 seconds. The shells rip through the bomber's right engine. Metal fragments spray, the propeller warps. The engine seizes. The Dornier drops out of formation, crew scrambling, but the bomber is still flying on 1 engine, still capable of making it back to Bulgaria. Marinos does not pursue. Ammunition is too limited. A damaged bomber escaping is better than wasting more rounds on a target that is already mission killed. He pulls up, scans for threats. A Messerschmitt Bf-109 is diving toward him. The German pilot has altitude and speed, every advantage. Marinos brakes hard left, pulls into a turn that grays his vision and makes his lungs burn. 4.5 Gs. The PZL turns tight. Tighter than the Messerschmitt can match. The German overshoots, climbs away, uses his superior speed to reset the engagement. But Marinos is learning. Yesterday he learned that the Bf-109 has overwhelming speed advantage. Today he is learning how to exploit the PZL's tighter turn radius, how to force the German into turning fights where speed becomes a liability. The dogfight lasts 6 minutes. Marinos damages 1 more bomber. Fires 38 rounds of 20mm at a Dornier that makes the mistake of separating from the formation. Hits the fuselage. Sees the bomber shudder. But it keeps flying. His cannons are empty. He switches to machine guns, engages a Bf-109 that makes a second pass at him, fires 94 rounds. Sees hits on the German's tail section. The Messerschmitt breaks off trailing smoke. At 0904 hours, the German formation breaks off, turns north. The bombers have jettisoned their loads, missing their targets, and are running for home. Mission disrupted. Not destroyed, but disrupted. The 6 Greek fighters land at 0999 hours. Losses 1 PZL damaged by Bf-109 cannon fire. Pilot wounded but alive. Aircraft repairable. 31 fighters this morning. 30 operational now. April 8th 9. The attrition.
The next 2 days are a blur of sorties and losses. April 8th morning raid on Larissa. Marinos flies 2 sorties. Shoots down nothing ammunition, too limited for reliable kills. Squadron loses 2 fighters. 1 pilot killed when his aircraft explodes at 6,000 feet. 1 crashes on landing with battle damage. 28 fighters remaining.
April 9th. German panzers within 30 kilometers of Larissa. Evacuation order issued. Squadron flies south to Tanagra and Tatoi airfields near Athens. 2 fighters lost to engine failures during the transfer. Both pilots survive. 26 fighters remaining. 3 days of war. 41 fighters reduced to 26. 15 pilots dead or wounded. The numbers grinding down. But for every Greek fighter lost, the Luftwaffe has lost aircraft too. 32 on the first day. More since. Not enough to stop them. Not enough to change the outcome. But enough to make them remember that Greece did not surrender quietly. April the 10th, 1941, 1200 hours. Tanagra Airfield. The British liaison officer arrives at noon on April 10th. Captain Richard Thompson, Royal Air Force, 34 years old. Navigator on a Bristol Blenheim bomber before being assigned to coordinate with Greek forces. He looks tired. Everyone looks tired. He spreads reconnaissance photographs across the table in the operations building. Black and white images taken from high altitude. Roads, vehicles, the unmistakable shapes of German panzer tanks moving in columns. "We need low-altitude reconnaissance of these positions," Thompson says. He points to areas on the map north of Larissa. "German armor is moving faster than predicted. We need accurate counts of vehicles, tank types, artillery positions, air defense locations." He looks at Colonel Papadakis. "We have no reconnaissance aircraft available. Everything is committed to other sectors. We need fighters to fly the mission." Reconnaissance. Low altitude, which means flying slow, flying straight, flying in a way that makes an aircraft a perfect target for anti-aircraft guns. "What altitude?" Marinos asks. Thompson meets his eyes. 800 feet, below radar coverage, but well within range of every anti-aircraft gun the Germans have. Yes. 800 feet. Flak range for 88mm guns is 30,000 feet. At 800 feet, every German anti-aircraft weapon from 20mm autocannons to 88mm heavy guns will be firing. The aircraft will be close enough that gunners can aim visually, can lead the target, can put shells exactly where the aircraft will be. "How many aircraft do you need?" Papadakis asks. 3 would give us overlapping coverage. 3 fighters, 3 pilots, sent on a reconnaissance mission that has a very high probability of becoming a suicide mission. Marinos stands. "I will go." Thanos Georgiadis, the farmer's son from Crete, stands as well. "I will go." A 3rd pilot volunteers. A lieutenant named Costas from another squadron. Quiet man, 26 years old, 7 kills against the Italians. He does not say anything, just nods. 14-15 hours. Reconnaissance. 3 PZLP-24 fighters take off at 14-15 hours. No bombs, no external stores. Just cameras mounted in place of the 20mm ammunition drums, and full machine gun loads. 600 rounds of 7.92mm per aircraft. For self-defense. For the anti-aircraft positions they will photograph. They fly north at low altitude, 200 feet above the ground, following valleys, using terrain to mask their approach. At 14:37 hours, they reach the target area. German panzer columns moving south, tanks and armored vehicles in formations that stretch for kilometers. Supply trucks, artillery tractors, self-propelled guns. Everything the Wehrmacht needs to sustain an offensive through mountainous terrain. Marinos pulls up to 800 feet, activates the camera, begins his photo run, straight and level. Speed reduced to 200 miles per hour. The cameras need a stable platform, need consistent altitude, need the aircraft to fly predictably so the images overlap and intelligence analysts can create a complete picture. It makes him a perfect target. The anti-aircraft fire begins immediately. 88mm shells burst at altitude, black puffs of smoke that blossom and dissipate. Too high. The German gunners are leading for a target at normal bombing altitude. Then the 37mm autocannons open fire. These gunners have the range. Shells streak past Marinos' wings. Bright flashes. Tracer rounds making lines of light through the air. One shell hits his left wing, punches through the fabric covering, exits the other side. No critical damage. The metal framework holds. Marinos holds his course. Cameras clicking. Each photograph capturing enemy positions, tank counts, artillery locations, information that British forces need to plan their defense. Thanos Georgiadis is flying 300 meters to Marinos' right, also photographing, also taking fire. Too much fire. A 37mm shell hits Thanos' engine. The sound is a sharp crack that cuts through the roar of Marinos' own engine. He sees the hit. sees metal fragments spray from the cowling. Thanos' engine begins smoking. White smoke. Coolant leak. The temperature gauge in his cockpit must be climbing into the red. Cylinder head temperature rising. 100 degrees Celsius. 110. 120. At 140 degrees, the engine will seize. Metal expanding from heat. Pistons welding themselves to cylinder walls. Thermodynamics are absolute. Thanos' voice crackles over the radio. Engine overheat. Temperature 140. His engine has perhaps 2 minutes before catastrophic failure. Marinos keys his radio. Thanos, break off. Head for emergency landing. Negative. Thanos' voice is calm, unnaturally calm. The voice of a man who has made a decision. I see the Panzer column below. My cameras have the photos, but I also have 600 rounds of 7.92 millimeter. Marinos understands immediately what Thanos is planning. Thanos, no. Tell my father. Thanos' voice is still calm. Tell him the farm in Crete was too small anyway. I was meant for something bigger. Thanos' PZL rolls inverted, pulls into a dive, not a controlled dive, not an attack dive where a pilot plans to pull out at the bottom. This is a terminal dive, an aircraft pointed at the ground with a pilot who has no intention of pulling up. The fighter accelerates, 300 miles per hour, 350, approaching the never-exceed speed where the airframe will begin to disintegrate. Thanos fires his machine guns, all 600 rounds in one continuous burst, tracer rounds pouring from his wings like water. The bullets rake across the German Panzer column, stitching across tanks and trucks and men, and then his aircraft impacts. The explosion is enormous. Fighter fuel and ammunition detonating simultaneously. The fireball engulfs 3 Panzer III tanks. The vehicles erupt in secondary explosions as their own ammunition cooks off. 6 tanks destroyed. 23 German soldiers killed. 1 Greek fighter lost. 1 pilot dead. Marinos circles once. His cameras capture the burning vehicles, the smoke rising in a pillar that is visible for kilometers. He does not say anything. There is nothing to say. Thanos made his own equation, chose his own terms. Damaged engine plus 600 rounds plus German tanks equals 1 final contribution to a war he could no longer win. Marinos turns south. Costas forms up on his wing, both fighters carrying reconnaissance photos that cost one man's life to obtain. They land at Tanagra at 15:01 hours. Captain Thompson downloads the camera footage, analyzes the images. His expression is grim. This confirms what we feared. The German advance is faster than we can counter. These positions will be overrun within 48 hours. 48 hours. 2 days. Colonel Papadakis updates the status board. 26 fighters this morning. 25 now. Marinos walks away from the operations building. Needs air. Needs space. Needs something other than the arithmetic of death. He finds a quiet place, behind a maintenance hangar, where no one is watching. And for the first time since the war started, Marinos Stavrakis allows himself to feel the weight of what is happening. Stavros dead. Thanos dead. Leonidas wounded. 15 pilots lost in 4 days. 41 fighters reduced to 25. The Germans have lost perhaps 50 aircraft, a rounding error in their 1,000-plane force. The Greeks have lost 16. An existential crisis. He thinks about Thanos' last words. The farm was too small. I was meant for something bigger. Thanos was 25 years old, a farmer's son who joined the Air Force to escape poverty, who learned to fly because it offered something beyond olive groves and goat herding, who died by deliberately flying his fighter into German tanks because it was the only way he could still matter. Sacrifice defies calculation. But Thanos mattered. For 2 minutes and 47 seconds between engine failure and impact, he mattered more than numbers could measure. Marinos sits with his back against the hangar wall, just for a moment, just to rest. He pulls out paper and pen, writes a letter he will never send. Dear Mother, I am well. The fighting continues. I think of Father often. I think of the hills. I will protect them as long as I can. Your son, Marinos. He folds the paper, puts it in his pocket. If he dies, someone will find it. We'll know he tried. April 11th, 1941. 0900 hours. Piraeus raid. The morning of April 11th brings clear skies and German bombers. 30 Junkers, Ju-88 medium bombers, fast, modern, capable of carrying 2,000 kilograms of bombs each. Above them, 20 Messerschmitt Bf-110 heavy fighters provide escort. Twin-engine fighters with devastating forward firepower. 5 Greek PZL fighters scramble to intercept. Marinos leads. 4 other pilots form up on his wings. 5 obsolete monoplanes against 50 modern German aircraft. They climb 8,000 feet, 10,000, 12,000. The altitude where the air is thin and cold and engines struggle for oxygen. Marinos spots the formation at 12,500 feet. The Ju-88s are in tight formation. Discipline perfect. Flying at 280 miles per hour toward Piraeus port. Attack the bombers, Marinos calls over the radio. Ignore the escorts unless they engage. The Bf-110s immediately dive to intercept. Twin engines roaring. 4 20mm cannons in the nose plus machine guns. These are not nimble dogfighters, but they do not need to be. They have speed and firepower. Marinos picks a Ju-88 on the formation's edge, dives toward it, closes the range, 300 meters, 200. The bomber's defensive gunners open fire. Machine gun rounds streak past his canopy. Marinos has 48 rounds of 20mm ammunition. Everything he has. He fires it all in one sustained burst. 3 seconds of fire. The shells rip through the Ju-88's fuselage. He sees metal tear, sees the right engine catch fire. Flames spread along the wing. The Ju-88 drops out of formation. Crew bailing out. Parachutes blossoming against the blue sky. Kill number 4 for Marinos Stavrakis. But now a Bf-110 is on him. The German heavy fighter dives from above. 4 20mm cannons open fire. Shells streak past Marinos' wings. He brakes hard left, pulls into the tightest turn the PZL can manage. 5 Gs. His vision greys. The world narrows to a tunnel. The Bf-110 cannot follow. Too heavy. Too much momentum. The German pilot tries to turn with Marinos, but physics are against him. Marinos reverses, pulls the stick hard right, rolls inverted, pulls through. Now he is behind the Bf-110. He fires his machine guns. 142 rounds. The only ammunition he has left. Tracer rounds walk across the Bf-110's right engine. He sees hits, sees metal spark. The engine begins trailing smoke. The German pilot breaks off, dives away using speed. Marinos is out of 20mm ammunition, down to 362 rounds of machine gun ammunition. The dogfight swirls around him. Greek fighters engaging bombers and escorts. The sky full of aircraft turning and diving and climbing. He sees one of his squadron mates, a pilot named Ioannis Vretos, the 30-year-old schoolteacher attacking a Ju-88. Sees Ioannis' guns flash. The bomber shudders but keeps flying. Then a Bf-110 destroys Ioannis' fighter. The cannon shells hit the PZL's engine. The nose disintegrates. Pieces of metal and engine components spray backward. The fighter enters an uncontrolled dive. Ioannis tries to bail out. Marinos sees the canopy jettison, sees Ioannis struggling against the G-forces and the wind blast. But at this speed, in this dive, bailing out is nearly impossible. The slipstream pins him against his seat. He cannot push free. The PZL impacts the ground 6 kilometers from Piraeus. Ioannis is dead. 30 years old. Taught history to children. Now he is history himself. Marinos witnesses it. Another pilot dead. Another name added to the casualty list. He does not have time to mourn. The dogfight continues. At 0927 hours, the German formation breaks off. The Ju-88s have dropped their bombs, most missing their targets due to Greek fighter harassment, and are turning north. Running for home. The 5 Greek fighters that scrambled return to Tanagra. 4 land. Ioannis does not return. Marinos climbs from his cockpit. His hands are steady, but his face is grey with exhaustion. He has been flying for nearly an hour. Has engaged German bombers and fighters 5 times. Has shot down 1 Ju-88. Has damaged 1 Bf-110. And has watched Ioannis die. The squadron doctor examines him. Checks his eyes where blood vessels have burst from repeated G-forces. Checks his blood pressure. You are operating beyond normal human limits, the doctor says. Your body is breaking down. You need rest. How long can I fly? Physically, you can fly until your body fails completely, but your reaction time is slowing. Your vision is compromised. Eventually, you will make a mistake, and mistakes at 300 miles per hour are fatal. Marinos understands. The doctor is telling him he is dying by degrees, that every sortie wears down his body's reserves, but everyone is operating on borrowed time. Thank you, doctor, Marinos says. Colonel Papadakis is waiting with updated intelligence. German forces have broken through at Monastir Gap, Papadakis says. Panzer units are advancing south faster than predicted. British Commonwealth forces are falling back to the Olympus-Servia line. If that line breaks, there is nothing between the Germans and Athens except distance. He updates the map. Red markers advancing, blue markers retreating. Current fighter strength 24 aircraft, Papadakis continues. We lost Ioannis. 2 other fighters from different squadrons were shot down this morning. 24 fighters. 5 days ago, there were 41. April the 12th to 13. Compressed operations. The next 2 days blur together in exhaustion and combat. April 12th. 2 sorties. German reconnaissance flights over Athens. Marinos shoots down 1 Henschel H-126 observation plane. First kill in 2 days. Squadron loses 1 fighter to engine failure during landing. Pilot survives. 23 fighters remaining. April 13th. 3 sorties. The longest day.
Morning raid on Athens, afternoon raid on Piraeus, evening raid on British positions. Marinos flies until his ammunition is exhausted and his fuel is down to 20 minutes remaining. He fires every round, damages 2 German bombers, survives. Squadron loses 2 fighters, both pilots killed.
21 fighters remaining. 7 days of war. 41 fighters reduced to 21. 20 pilots dead or wounded. Marinos has flown 18 combat sorties since April 6th, has shot down 5 German aircraft, has damaged 9 others, has survived 37 bullet hits across multiple sorties. His PZL P-24 tail number 128, held together by Stavros's reinforcements, continues to fly, despite damage that should have destroyed it 3 times over. On the evening of April the 13th, Marinos sits alone in the pilot's barracks at Tatoi airfield. They have relocated again. Tanagra is now within German artillery range. He pulls out the letter he wrote to his mother, reads it again. The words seem inadequate. He adds one line, "I have tried to be fierce," folds it, returns it to his pocket. Outside, the mechanics are working by lamplight, maintaining the 21 fighters that remain, scrounging ammunition that no longer exists. Keeping obsolete aircraft flying through determination and improvisation. Tomorrow the Germans will come again, and Greece will rise to meet them. April the 14th, 1941, 0700 hours, Tatoi airfield. The morning briefing on April 14th carries the weight of inevitability. Colonel Papadakis stands before 19 pilots, not 21. 2 are in the hospital with injuries that will not heal fast enough to matter. That leaves 19 men to fly 21 aircraft. British forces are beginning evacuation procedures, Papadakis says without preamble. The Olympus-Servia line has collapsed. German panzers have broken through. British Commonwealth forces cannot hold. They are falling back to evacuation points. Ships will begin loading troops within 48 hours. He lets that information settle. The British, the Allies who came to help Greece, are leaving, retreating to Egypt, saving what they can before the Wehrmacht crushes everything. The Greek government has relocated to Crete, Papadakis continues. Athens will be declared an open city to prevent its destruction. The Germans will occupy the capital within 6 days. 6 days. April the 20th. Current fighter strength 21 aircraft. Ammunition stocks are critically low. We have perhaps enough rounds for 2 more days of full operations. After that, we will be reduced to machine guns only. He pauses, looks at each pilot. I want to share something with you, something that changes the context of what we are doing here. He unfolds a map. Not Greece. Further east. The Soviet Union. British intelligence has intercepted German communications. Operation Barbarossa, the planned invasion of the Soviet Union, originally scheduled for May 15th, 1941. The pilots lean forward. To launch Barbarossa on schedule, Germany needs to conclude operations in the Balkans by late April. Every day we delay them is 1 day less for Wehrmacht preparation. Every week pushes them closer to the Russian winter. Marinos processes this. They are not just fighting for Greece. They might be fighting for Moscow, for the Eastern Front, for millions of lives that depend on timing and logistics. We cannot save Greece, Papadakis says quietly, but we might help save Russia. Every day we contest the sky matters beyond our borders. The silence is profound. Then one pilot asks, "Does this change our orders?" "No," Papadakis says. "It explains why they matter." Marinos thinks about the numbers. 21 fighters cannot stop the Luftwaffe, cannot prevent Athens from falling. But 21 fighters contesting the sky for 6 more days might delay the Wehrmacht enough to disrupt Barbarossa's timeline. The arithmetic remains impossible, but the meaning has changed. 8:42 hours, Athens raid. At 08:42 hours, German bombers appear over Athens. 20 Dornier do 17 bombers with Messerschmitt Bf-109 escort. 6 Greek fighters scramble. Marinos has 34 rounds of 20mm ammunition, 17 per gun, 2 seconds of firing time, plus 260 rounds of 7.92mm. This might be the last time his cannons have ammunition. They climb, 8,000 feet. The bombers are in tight formation heading for Athens city center. Marinos picks his target. A Dornier at the edge of the formation, attacks from below, closes to 80 meters closer than he has ever fired before. Ammunition too precious to waste at range. He fires all 34 rounds in one burst. 2 seconds. The Dornier's left wing tears away. The bomber enters a flat spin. No recovery possible. It impacts in the Athens suburbs. Kill number 6. His cannons click empty. No more 20mm ammunition. None remaining in stores. None left to scavenge. He switches to machine guns. Engages a Bf-109 that makes a second pass. Fires 106 rounds. Hits the German's tail section. The Messerschmitt breaks off trailing smoke but escapes. The squadron shoots down 2 bombers total. Damages 3 others. Mission disrupted. But the cost is high. 1 Greek fighter shot down. Pilot killed. 20 fighters remaining. That evening, the squadron armourer delivers the final assessment. No 20mm ammunition remains. All cannon rounds have been expended. We have approximately 4,000 rounds of 7.92mm total across all aircraft. That is 190 rounds per fighter. Enough for one sortie, maybe two if we ration. Papadakis nods. Then we make them count. April 15th, 16. The breaking point. April the 15th. 2 sorties. Machine guns only. Marinos damages 1 German bomber. Cannot destroy it without cannon fire. Squadron loses 1 fighter. Pilot bails out over Athens, survives. 19 fighters remaining. April 16th. The day everything nearly ends. Morning raid. 30 German bombers. The largest formation yet. 8 Greek fighters scramble. Fighters. The dogfight is brutal. Machine guns against cannon-armed bombers and fighters. The Greeks are outmatched. They fight anyway. 2 Greek fighters are shot down in the first 5 minutes. Both pilots killed. A third fighter is so badly damaged it crashes on landing. Pilot survives, but aircraft is destroyed. 17 fighters remaining. That evening, a rumour spreads through the squadron. British Hawker Hurricane fighters are being sent from Egypt. Modern fighters, 340 miles per hour. They could compete with Bf-109s. Hope flickers. Captain Thompson arrives at 1800 hours. His face tells the truth before he speaks. No Hurricanes, he says quietly. RAF command cannot spare them. Egypt needs every fighter, but we are sending 50 drums of aviation fuel and what ammunition we can gather. The hope dies. Marinos looks at his damaged PZL. Machine guns only. Fuel for maybe 2 more days. Ammunition for 1 more sortie. We are alone, he says quietly. You were always alone, Thompson replies. But you fought anyway. That is what they will remember. April 17th, 1941, 06:15 hours. The morning of April 17th. Leonidas Antoniou returns. He walks into the pilot's barracks without crutches, his left leg still healing from 7 shrapnel fragments, his wrist still splintered from the break, but he is walking. I have been cleared to return to flight status, Leonidas says. Marinos looks at him. The kid should be in a hospital, should be recovering for months. Your wrist is broken, Marinos says. I can fly with one hand. I can pull a trigger with my right hand. That is all that matters. Marinos recognizes the determination, sees himself in this young pilot. Welcome back, Marinos says. Leonidas sits beside him. How many fighters? 17. How many pilots? 21. More pilots than aircraft. The irony is bitter. My father was a fisherman, Leonidas says. Imperious. He told me the sea does not care about your courage. The sea has arithmetic, weight and buoyancy and wave forces. If your boat is too small, courage does not save you. He pauses. But he also told me that sometimes you take the boat out anyway, because the fish need to be caught, because your family needs to eat, because courage is not about ignoring arithmetic. It is about accepting arithmetic and choosing to act despite it. Marinos thinks about his own father, a fisherman in Pyrgos, who taught similar lessons. Your father was a wise man, Marinos says. He died when the Germans bombed Piraeus on April 11th. He was unloading nets when the bombs fell. Marinos looks at Leonidas, sees the grief, sees the determination forged from loss. I am sorry. I am going to fly tomorrow, Leonidas says. I am going to shoot down German aircraft, not because it changes the arithmetic, but because my father deserves to know his son tried. Revenge and honor follow no equation. Then we fly together, Marinos says. April 18th, 1941. Final briefing. The morning of April 18th brings the final briefing. 15 pilots assemble. 2 fighters were lost yesterday to accidents, landing gear failures, stressed airframes finally giving up. Both pilots survived, but the aircraft are destroyed. 15 fighters remaining. German forces will reach Athens by April 20th. Colonel Papadakis says. The British evacuation is underway. Greek forces are being overwhelmed. The outcome is no longer in doubt. He pauses. His voice remains steady, but his eyes are heavy. I am authorized to offer evacuation one final time. Fly to Crete tonight. From there to Egypt. Join the RAF. No one will question your decision. You have fought beyond what anyone could ask. Silence. Marinos stands. How long do we have? 2 days, April 19th and 20th. Then Athens falls. Then we have 2 days to matter. One by one, the other pilots stand. All 15. The men who should evacuate, who should save themselves, who have done everything numbers say is possible. They choose to fight 2 more days. Papadakis nods slowly. Then we fly until there is nothing left. April 19th, 1941. Penultimate day. April 19th is a day of German air superiority and Greek defiance. 3 major raids, 50 bombers in each formation. Escort fighters numbering in the dozens. 15 Greek fighters rise to meet them. Machine guns only. Ammunition nearly exhausted. Fuel reserves critical. Morning raid. Greeks shoot down 1 bomber. Damage 3 others. Lose 2 fighters. Both pilots killed. 13 fighters remaining. Afternoon raid. Greeks damage 2 bombers. Lose 1 fighter. Pilot bails out, survives with burns. 12 fighters remaining. Evening raid. The last sortie of April 19th. Germans targeting evacuation ships in Piraeus harbour. 6 Greek fighters scramble. Marinos leads. Leonidas on his wing. 4 others. They engage at sunset.
Golden light painting the sky. Tracer rounds arcing through the dying day. Marinos fires his remaining machine gun ammunition at a Dornier Do-17. 148 rounds. His last rounds. Sees hits, but the bomber keeps flying. His guns click empty. Both cannons long since dry. Now the machine guns too. Marinos Stavrakis is completely out of ammunition. He keys his radio. Winchester. All weapons dry. But he stays in the fight. Flies alongside his squadron mates. Draws German fire away from fighters that still have rounds to shoot. One of the Greek fighters shoots down a Dornier. The bomber explodes in midair. A small victory. But 2 Greek fighters are lost. 1 explodes from a direct hit. 1 crashes into the sea trying to evade a Bf-109. The 6 fighters that took off at sunset come home in darkness. 4 land at Tatoi. 2 do not return. 10 fighters remaining. Marinos climbs from his cockpit for what might be the last time. His PZL P-24 tail number 128. The aircraft that survived a ramming attack in November. That has carried him through 26 combat sorties. That has absorbed 43 bullet hits across 13 days of war. Stavros's reinforcements held through it all. Every bullet that should have killed Marinos was deflected by the extra bracing, the thicker metal, the modifications made by a mechanic who died on the first day, but whose work saved lives for 13 more. Marinos runs his hand along the fuselage one last time, feels the patches, the dents, the scars. "Thank you," he whispers, to the aircraft, to Stavros, to the impossible arithmetic that kept him alive this long. He walks to the operations building. Colonel Papadakis is waiting. "Tomorrow is April 20th, Papadakis says. The Germans will enter Athens. We have 10 fighters, perhaps 300 rounds of machine gun ammunition total, enough for 1 final engagement." He looks at Marinos.
You have flown more sorties than anyone.
You have 7 confirmed kills. You have done your duty 10 times over. If you want to evacuate tonight, I will arrange it. Marinos thinks about the promise he made to his father, about protecting the hills of Pyrgos, about fighting until there is nothing left to fight with. "I fly tomorrow," Marinos says. "We all fly tomorrow." Papadakis nods. He expected nothing else. "Then tomorrow we make 1 final stand, over Athens, over our capital. We fly until every aircraft is destroyed or every pilot is dead. We show them that Greece did not surrender, that we contested the sky until the last possible moment." That night, Marinos writes 1 final addition to his letter home. "Tomorrow is the last day. I am ready." He does not mail it. He will carry it with him tomorrow. If he dies, someone will find it. If he survives, he will finish it. But survival seems unlikely. The arithmetic has finally caught up. 10 fighters against the entire Luftwaffe. Tomorrow, mathematics wins. But today, Greece fought, and that will have to be enough. April the 20th, 1941, 05:45 hours, Tatoi Airfield. The last dawn breaks over Athens clear and cold. Perfect visibility, not a cloud in the sky. The kind of morning that makes a pilot grateful to see the sunrise one more time, and certain it will be the last. 10 PZL P-24 fighters sit on the flight line at Tatoi Airfield. Tail numbers 128, 141, 146, 167, 182, 217, 229, 241. 10 obsolete monoplanes that have somehow survived 13 days of combat against impossible odds. This morning, they will not survive. Marinos Stavrakis stands beside his fighter for the last time. PZL P-24, tail number 128, the aircraft that began this war with him on April 6th. The fighter he rammed an Italian bomber with 6 months ago. It has been patched and repaired so many times that little original fabric remains on the control surfaces. The metal fuselage bears 43 bullet holes covered by riveted patches. The engine has been rebuilt twice. The propeller replaced once after the ramming, but it still flies. Stavros's reinforcements, the extra bracing, the thicker metal, the modifications that cost 5 miles per hour but saved Marinos' life repeatedly, have held through everything. Every hit that should have killed him was deflected or absorbed by the strengthened frame. The mechanic died on the first day, but his work lived for 13 more. Marinos climbs into the cockpit.
The seat is worn through to the padding. The control stick is smooth from his hands. The instrument panel is scratched and faded, but every gauge still works. He has no ammunition. The squadron armourer distributed the last 300 rounds of 7.92mm machine gun ammunition across the 10 fighters. 30 rounds per aircraft, 2 seconds of firing time. Marinos' aircraft received none. The rounds went to pilots who might have a chance to use them effectively.
Marinos with 7 confirmed kills, the squadron's leading ace is flying into combat completely unarmed. He will fly anyway, because someone needs to witness the end. Someone needs to survive long enough to tell what happened here, what Greece did, what 41 pilots became in 14 days. Colonel Papadakis emerges from the operations building. He walks to each aircraft, speaks briefly with each pilot, shakes each man's hand. When he reaches Marinos, Papadakis says simply, "Thank you for staying." "There was nowhere else to be," Marinos replies. Papadakis nods. He understands. These men chose to be here. Could have evacuated, could have saved themselves, chose instead to fight until nothing remains. "The Germans will launch their victory formation at 1100 hours, Papadakis says. 60 aircraft, bombers and fighters, flying over Athens to demonstrate their control of the sky. We will contest them one final time. 60 aircraft, 10 Greek fighters, 6-1 odds.
And the Greeks have almost no ammunition. When it is over, Papadakis continues, any pilot who survives will evacuate immediately to Crete. Ships are waiting. This is not a request. This is an order. Greece needs witnesses, needs men who can tell what happened here. Marinos understands. They are not expected to survive. But if anyone does, they must live long enough to make the story matter. Understood, Colonel. Papadakis salutes. Marinos returns it. Then the colonel walks away, returns to the tower, where he will watch 10 pilots fly to their deaths because courage demands it. Marinos looks at his watch. 0612 hours. 4 hours and 48 minutes until the Germans come. He closes his eyes. Just for a moment. Thinks about his father. About the hills of Pyrgos. About the promise he made. He kept it. For 14 days he kept it. The hills will fall to the Germans today, but they will remember that someone tried to protect them. At 10:45 hours, the air raid sirens begin to wail. The Germans are coming. 10:55 hours, the last takeoff. 10 PZL P-24 fighters take off at 10:55 hours. Marinos leads. Leonidas Antoniou flies his right wing. 8 others form up behind them. Young men in obsolete fighters about to face the entire Luftwaffe. They climb. 2,000 feet, 4,000, 6,000, 8,000. At 1102 hours they see the German formation. 60 aircraft in perfect formation. 30 Junkers, Ju-88 bombers in the center. 20 Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighters above them. 10 Bf-110 heavy fighters below them. A victory parade. A demonstration of German air superiority. An arrogant display meant to show Athens that resistance is futile. The Germans are not expecting opposition. Greece has no fighters left. Everyone knows this. The Royal Hellenic Air Force was destroyed days ago. This is an unopposed flight over a conquered city. Then 10 Greek fighters attack. 1104 hours. The final battle. Marinos leads the attack from above, diving toward the bomber formation at maximum speed. 270 miles per hour, 280, 290. He has no ammunition, but he still has airspeed and surprise and the willingness to use his aircraft as a weapon if necessary. The German formation does not break. They are too confident, too certain of their superiority. A few obsolete Greek fighters cannot threaten 60 modern German aircraft. They are about to learn otherwise. Leonidas Antoniou, flying with a broken wrist and 7 shrapnel fragments still in his leg, fires first. 30 rounds of 7.92mm machine gun ammunition. 2 seconds. His only shots. The rounds hit a Ju-88's cockpit. The pilot is killed instantly. The co-pilot tries to take control, but the bomber is already diving. Crew bails out. The Ju-88 crashes into Athens 6 kilometers from the Acropolis. 1 down. The German formation breaks. Bombers scattering. Fighters diving to intercept the Greeks. The sky erupts into chaos. Marinos, unarmed, flies straight through the bomber formation. Forces them to maneuver. Draws fire away from the Greek fighters that still have ammunition. A Bf-109 attacks him from above. Marinos breaks hard left. Turns inside the German. The Messerschmitt overshoots. Marinos has no guns to exploit the opportunity, but he bought 3 seconds for another Greek fighter to attack a bomber. The dogfight becomes a swirling melee over Athens. 10 Greek fighters against 60 German aircraft. Machine guns against cannons. Desperation against certainty.
Marinos sees another Greek pilot, Kostas, the quiet lieutenant who volunteered for the reconnaissance mission attacker Ju-88. Fires his 30 rounds, hits the bomber's engine, but Kostas's fighter is immediately swarmed by 3 Bf-109s. Cannon fire tears through the PZL. Kostas's aircraft shudders, smokes, losing altitude. Then Kostas does something impossible.
His engine is failing. His aircraft is dying. He has no ammunition left. He points his nose at the lead Ju-88 in the formation, the bomber that would have dropped its payload on the Acropolis, on Greece's most sacred site, on 2,000 years of history. And he rams it, deliberately, intentionally, following the example Marinos set 6 months ago. The collision is catastrophic. Both aircraft disintegrate, pieces tumbling through the sky, Kostas's PZL and the German Ju-88 falling together in a tangle of metal and fire. Neither crew survives, but the Acropolis stands untouched. Marinos witnesses it, sees Kostas's sacrifice, sees the mathematics rewritten one final time. 2 bombers destroyed, 8 Greek fighters remaining. The Germans are no longer treating this as a victory flight. This is combat. 60 aircraft against 8, but the Greeks are fighting like cornered wolves. Another Greek fighter explodes. Direct hit from a Bf-110's cannons. Pilot dies instantly.
No parachute. 7 remaining. A Bf-109 dives on Marinos. He brakes right, pulls into a tight turn. The German follows. Tighter turn. Higher G-forces. Marinos' vision greys. 4 Gs. 5. 5.5. Blood vessels burst in his eyes. His vision tunnels, but the turn is tight enough. The Bf-109 cannot match it. The German overshoots. Marinos rolls inverted, pulls through. Now he is behind the Messerschmitt. If he had ammunition, this would be a kill, but his guns are empty. He can only watch as the Bf-109 uses its superior speed to climb away, to reset, to attack again. 6 Greek fighters remaining. The battle has lasted 11 minutes. It feels like 11 hours. Marinos sees Leonidas Antoniou engaging a Bf-110. The young pilot, flying with one hand because his wrist is broken, fires his machine guns, has no ammunition. His guns were empty after the first engagement. But Leonidas flies anyway, draws fire, creates opportunities for others. Then a Bf-109 bounces him from above. The classic attack. Speed and surprise and devastating firepower. Cannon shells rip through Leonidas's fighter. The PZL's wing tears away. The aircraft enters a flat spin. Marinos watches, keys his radio. "Leonidas, bail out. Can't, control's gone. Tell my father I tried." The fighter impacts on the Athens outskirts. Fireball visible from 10 kilometers away. Leonidas Antoniou is dead. 22 years old. Survived the first day, returned from injury. Died on the last day. 5 Greek fighters remaining. The Germans are pressing their advantage now. 60 aircraft against 5. The outcome is certain. This is target practice, but the targets refuse to die quietly. Another Greek pilot shoots down a Ju-88, uses his last 30 rounds. The bomber explodes in midair. Secondary explosions as the bomb load detonates. 3 German bombers destroyed. But now that Greek fighter is out of ammunition. Defenseless.
A Bf-110 destroys it seconds later. Pilot bails out. Parachute deploys. He might survive. 4 Greek fighters remaining. Marinos is still flying, still unarmed, still drawing fire, still creating opportunities for the 3 pilots who have ammunition left. But those pilots are running out of rounds, running out of time, running out of luck. At 11:16 hours, 12 minutes after the battle began, Marinos finds himself alone against 15 German fighters. The other 3 Greek pilots are dead, shot down in the last minute. No parachutes seen. Marinos Stavrakis, the pilot who rammed an Italian bomber 6 months ago, who flew 29 combat sorties, who shot down 7 German aircraft, who survived 63 bullet hits across 14 days, is the last Greek fighter in the sky. 1 PZL P-24 against 15 Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Bf-110s. The arithmetic is final. 11:17 hours. The last dive. The German fighters surround him, orbiting like sharks.
They know he is out of ammunition. Know he is defenseless. They could destroy him in seconds, but they are curious. Respectful, perhaps. This lone Greek pilot has been flying for 13 minutes without firing a shot. Drawing fire, maneuvering, surviving. 1 Bf-109 pilot. Hauptmann Hans Weber, a 47-kill ace who has fought over Poland and France and Britain, keys his radio on the international frequency. "Greek pilot, you have fought well. Your ammunition is exhausted. Surrender. Bail out. You will be treated with honor." Marinos hears this. Understands German enough to know what is being offered. He thinks about surrender, about surviving, about living to tell the story. Then he thinks about Stavros, about Thanos, about Leonidas, about the 41 pilots who chose to stay when evacuation was offered. He thinks about his promise to his father. He keys his radio, responds in broken German. "I have one weapon left." Weber understands immediately. "Do not do this."
"You have fought enough." But Marinos is already acting. He sees a Bf-110 heavy fighter below him. Twin engines, slow, ungainly in a turn. He rolls inverted, points his nose down, advances throttle to maximum. He is going to ram it, just like November 2nd, just like Costas did 12 minutes ago, one final time. The dive accelerates, 300 miles per hour. 320, 340. Beyond the never-exceed speed, the airframe shuddering, metal groaning, rivets straining. But Stavros's reinforcements hold. The thicker metal, the extra bracing, the modifications that have saved Marinos' life 20 times are about to save him one more time. Or kill him. The difference no longer matters. The Bf-110 pilot sees him coming, tries to maneuver. Too late. Too slow. At the last second, the Bf-110's rear gunner, understanding what is about to happen, bails out, jumps from his position. Parachute blossoms. The pilot does not have time. Marinos' propeller, the same propeller he rammed an Italian bomber with replaced but similar chews through the Bf-110's tail section. Metal shrieks. Both aircraft shudder violently. But this time, Marinos is going too fast. The impact forces are too great. Even Stavros's reinforcements cannot save him. His propeller disintegrates, blades tearing away. The engine mounts shear. The entire power plant rips from the airframe and tumbles away. The Bf-110's tail section collapses. The German fighter enters an uncontrolled spin. The pilot bails out. Parachute deploys. He will survive. But Marinos' aircraft is dying. No engine, no propeller. Control surfaces damaged. Airspeed bleeding away. He has perhaps 30 seconds before the PZL becomes unflyable. He keys his radio one final time. "Greece fought. Remember that." Then he bails out. 11:18 hours. The descent. Marinos jettisons the canopy, unbuckles his harness. The slipstream tears at him. He pushes up, kicks free, falls. 2 seconds of free fall, then he pulls the ripcord. The parachute deploys with a jolt that tears at his shoulders, but it holds. He is at 4,000 feet, descending slowly. Below him, Athens spreads out, the city he defended for 14 days, the capital that is about to fall. Above him, the German fighters orbit, watching. They do not fire. They could strafe him in the parachute, kill him before he lands, but they do not. Weber's voice comes over the radio. Marinos still has his headset on. "You have fought with honor. We will not dishonor your death." But Marinos is not dying. Not yet. The parachute carries him down. 4,000 feet, 3,000, 2,000. He looks at the sky, empty of Greek fighters. 10 took off. 10 were destroyed. The Royal Hellenic Air Force has ceased to exist. But for 14 days, from April 6th to April 20th, Greece contested the sky. 41 pilots became 29, became 15, became 10, became 0. Each one fighting until ammunition was exhausted, or aircraft was destroyed, or pilot was killed. Marinos lands in a field 3 kilometers southeast of Athens. Farmers rush to help him, cut him free from his parachute harness, help him to his feet. An old woman looks at him, recognizes the gold cross on his uniform. "You were the last one flying," she says. Marinos looks up. The sky is empty. No Greek fighters, only German aircraft circling, victorious. "Not anymore," he says quietly. The civilians help him away from the field, hide him from German patrols. Within hours, he is on a truck heading south, toward evacuation points, toward Crete, toward whatever comes next. Behind him, Athens prepares for occupation. The swastika will fly over the Acropolis by evening. Greece has fallen. But Greece fought. And Marinos Stavrakis, the last Greek pilot in the sky over Athens, survived to tell the story. April 25th, 1941. Crete. Marinos reaches Crete 5 days after the last battle. He finds Colonel Papadakis organizing evacuation to Egypt. 20 Greek pilots made it out. 20 survivors from the 41 who refused evacuation on April 5th. 21 pilots died, their names recorded, their sacrifices remembered. "You were the last aircraft in the sky," Papadakis says when he sees Marinos. "I know. You rammed a Bf-110. I did. Just like November 2nd. Just like November 2nd. Papadakis looks at him. You should be dead 10 times over. Stavros reinforced my airframe. He saved my life from the grave. They stand in silence. Two men who watched Greece fall, who fought when numbers said not to, who survived when they should not have. What happens now? Marinos asks. We evacuate to Egypt, join the RAF, form the 335 Squadron, all Greek unit. We continue fighting. Against the Germans. Against anyone who threatens freedom. The war is not over. It has only just begun. Marinos boards a ship to Egypt 2 days later. The vessel is crowded with British and Greek soldiers, men retreating, regrouping, preparing to fight another day. On the voyage, Marinos learns what their resistance achieved. June 1941. Egypt. The accounting. In Egypt, British intelligence provides the final assessment. Operation Marita, the German invasion of Greece and Yugoslavia, was scheduled to take 1 week. It took 24 days, from April 6th to April 30th. The delay, 17 days. The Greco-Italian War bled Greece's air force from 79 fighters to 41 before Germany even attacked. Those 41 fighters contested the sky for 14 days. April 6th to April 20th. German losses during those 14 days, 52 aircraft destroyed, 117 damaged, not enough to stop them, but more than they anticipated, more than their operational planning budgeted for. The Luftwaffe expected to achieve air superiority in 48 hours with minimal losses. It took 14 days and cost them more aircraft than the Polish campaign. And Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union originally scheduled for May 15, 1941, was postponed. The new launch date, June 22, 1941. Delay 38 days, 5.5 weeks. British intelligence briefs Marinos personally, shows him the intercepted German communications, shows him the timeline. We cannot prove Greece caused the delay, the intelligence officer says. Weather was a factor, logistics, terrain in Yugoslavia, many variables. But Greece was a factor, Marinos says. Yes, a significant factor. The Balkan campaign took longer than Germany expected, bled resources, delayed preparations. When Operation Barbarossa finally launched, it was 5 weeks late. And Moscow. German forces reached the outskirts of Moscow on December 5, 1941. Winter stopped them. The offensive failed. If they had launched in mid-May as originally planned. The officer does not finish, does not need to. If Barbarossa had launched 5 weeks earlier, the Wehrmacht would have reached Moscow in early October, before winter, before the cold that historically destroys invading armies. Did Greece save Moscow? Marinos asks. We will never know for certain, but Greece gave Russia time, and time matters in war. Marinos thinks about Stavros, about Thanos, about Leonidas, about the 41 pilots. They fought for Greece, not knowing they might be fighting for Moscow, not knowing their 14 days might matter beyond their borders. They fought because honor demanded it, because surrender was unthinkable, because someone had to contest the sky even when numbers said it was pointless. And maybe, just maybe, those 14 days changed the war. 1941 to 1944. RAF 335 Squadron. Marinos joins RAF 335 Squadron, an all-Greek unit formed from the survivors of the Royal Hellenic Air Force. 20 pilots who escaped, 20 men who continue fighting. He flies Hawker Hurricanes, then Supermarine Spitfires, modern fighters, fast, powerful, everything the PZL P-24 was not. He flies combat missions over North Africa, escorts bombers, intercepts German reconnaissance aircraft, duels with Bf-109s over the desert. He shoots down 4 more aircraft. Added to his 7 from Greece, his final tally is 11 confirmed kills, an ace by any measure. In 1944, Greece is liberated. Marinos returns home, finds his village in Pyrgos occupied but intact, his mother alive, his father's grave unmarked but present. He places his Gold Cross medal on the grave. I kept the promise, father. I protected the hills as long as I could. The medal stays there, buried with the man who taught Marinos what honor means. September 14th, 1948. The final irony. Marinos Stavrakis is 32 years old in 1948. Wing commander in the Hellenic Air Force, instructor pilot, training the next generation. He has flown more than 300 combat sorties, has survived 2 ramming attacks, has accumulated 11 confirmed kills, has been shot at more than 200 times and hit 63 times. He is married, has a young daughter, lives in Athens. The war is over. He survived. On September 14th, 1948,
He is conducting a routine training flight in an
Airspeed Oxford trainer, a student pilot in the rear seat, flying over the Aegean Sea near his childhood home. At 14:23 hours, the engine fails. Mechanical malfunction. A broken connecting rod. 1 in a million failure. Marinos tries to glide to an emergency landing, but he is too low, too far from shore, the sea too rough. He radios the tower. Engine failure, going down. He tells the student to prepare for water landing, tells him to stay calm, tells him everything will be fine. The aircraft impacts the sea at 80 miles per hour. The student survives, rescued by fishermen. Marinos does not.
His body is recovered 2 hours later. Wing Commander Marinos Stavrakis, 32 years old, 11 confirmed kills, 297 combat sorties, survived the entire Second World War, killed by a training accident in peacetime. The irony is absolute. He survived ramming 2 aircraft, survived 14 days against the Luftwaffe, survived 63 bullet hits, and died because a connecting rod broke. The universe has no sense of poetry, only mathematics. The funeral, September 18th, 1948. Marinos is buried in Pyrgos, the village where he was born, near his father's grave. 20 pilots attend, the survivors of April 1941, men who flew with him, who fought beside him, who watched Greece fall and rise again. Colonel Papadakis, now retired, gives the eulogy. He does not speak of glory, does not speak of victory. He speaks of duty, of men who fought when numbers said not to, of 14 days that might have mattered.
Marinos Stavrakis rammed an Italian bomber when he had no ammunition. He flew 29 combat sorties in 14 days. He was the last Greek fighter in the sky over Athens on April 20th, 1941. He survived the war, and he died doing what he loved, teaching others to fly. Papadakis pauses. He once told me that courage is not about ignoring the arithmetic. It is about accepting the arithmetic and choosing to act despite it. He lived that truth. He died that truth, and we honor him by remembering it. The funeral ends. The pilots disperse, return to their lives, but they carry the memory of 41 pilots who chose to stay, who chose to fight, who contested the sky for 14 days against impossible odds. The memory of Greece's last sortie, December 11th, 1941, Hitler's Reichstag speech. In December 1941, 9 months before Marinos' death, 7 months after Greece fell, Adolf Hitler gave a speech to the Reichstag, declaring war on the United States, explaining Germany's position. In that speech, he mentioned Greece. The resistance in the Balkans cost us dearly. The Greek campaign delayed our operations. We faced unexpected opposition, primitive aircraft flown by determined men. It was inconvenient. Hitler did not elaborate, did not explain the delay to Barbarossa, did not admit the strategic impact. But he mentioned Greece, and that mention recorded in the Reichstag minutes preserved in German archives proves that Greece's resistance mattered, that 41 pilots contesting the sky for 14 days was not futile, not pointless, not forgotten. Hitler remembered, and that is enough. Modern day, Hellenic Air Force Base, 2025. The Hellenic Air Force flies F-16 Fighting Falcons now. Modern jets, advanced avionics, missiles that can hit targets 50 kilometers away. Technology beyond anything Marinos Stavrakis could have imagined in his open cockpit monoplane. But on the wall of every Greek Air Force base there is a photograph. Black and white, faded. It shows a young pilot standing beside a high-wing fighter, hand resting on the metal fuselage, face serious. 24 years old, wearing the Gold Cross of Valor. The caption reads, "Always dominate the heights." It has been the motto of the Hellenic Air Force since 1930. But after April 1941, it meant something different. It no longer meant air superiority in the technical sense. It no longer meant having the most aircraft or the best technology. It meant this. You fight even when you have already lost. You climb into your cockpit even when the enemy has 30 times your numbers. You fire your guns even when your aircraft is 80 miles per hour slower. You ram the enemy when your ammunition runs out. You dominate the heights, not because you can win, but because surrender is unthinkable. In the briefing room, a young pilot, 23 years old, fresh from training, asks his instructor about the photograph. Who was he? Second Lieutenant Marinos Stavrakis, Gold Cross of Valor, 11 confirmed kills, last Greek fighter in the sky over Athens, April 20th, 1941. What happened to him? He survived the war, became an instructor, died in a training accident in 1948. That's terrible. Yes, but he lived long enough to teach others, long enough to matter. The young pilot looks at the photograph, at the serious face, at the obsolete fighter in the background. Why do we remember him
The instructor thinks about this, about how to explain April 1941 to someone who has only known peace and modern aircraft and odds that are not 29 to 1. Because he and 40 others chose to fight when mathematics said not to. They had 41 obsolete fighters against 1,200 modern German aircraft. They should have evacuated.
Should have saved themselves, should have accepted reality. But they didn't. No. They fought for 14 days, lost 21 pilots, shot down 52 German aircraft, delayed the Wehrmacht long enough that Operation Barbarossa launched 5 weeks late enough that German forces reached Moscow in winter instead of autumn, late enough that Moscow did not fall. So they changed the war. Maybe. Historians still argue. Weather was a factor, logistics, terrain, many variables. We will never know if Greece's 14 days made the difference. The instructor looks at the photograph, at Marinos Stavrakis, 24 years old, standing beside his fighter. But we know they tried. And trying when numbers say not to is what always dominate the heights means now. The young pilot nods, understands, looks at the photograph with new eyes. Behind them, modern F-16s sit on the tarmac, weapons that could destroy 41 PZL P-24 fighters in minutes.
Technology that has advanced beyond recognition.
But the spirit remains the same. The spirit that says, when your country needs you, you fight. When the arithmetic is against you, you fight. When survival is impossible, you fight. Not because you will win, but because honor demands it. Marinos Stavrakis understood this. 41 pilots understood this. They flew into combat knowing they would lose, knowing most would die, knowing history might not even remember their names. They flew anyway. And for 14 days, from April 6th to April 20th, 1941, Greece dominated the heights, not through superior numbers, not through better technology, not through inevitable victory, but through will, through determination, through the refusal to surrender when mathematics said they should. Germany expected a walkover. Greece's last pilots made them fight for every inch of sky.
And when the final pilot, Marinos Stavrakis, bailed out of his aircraft at 4,000 feet over Athens on April 20th, 1941, he looked up at a sky empty of Greek fighters. But he had fought. Greece had fought. For 14 days they had contested the sky. The Royal Hellenic Air Force ceased to exist that day, but it never ceased to matter.